most all that go. I found out that the near-death experience was a ruse, that we're in a net, we're in lockdown. This is not about karma and reincarnation. They reincarnate. This interdimensional reptilian race keeps us in a cycle.
Well, do you feel like a messenger of sorts? You said at one time on your website, I never wanted to be a messenger. But do you feel like a messenger of sorts?
Well, I feel like I stumbled upon this EVP and then reverse speaking. It just happened. Whether it was ordained or not, I don't know. I don't feel that this is anything special with me. It's not my great gifts or my big psychic ability. It's nothing to do with that. It's a technical modality that I happened upon, and my intention for the website was to try to get other people listening too, because the more the better.
And you succeeded.
That's the best part of this.
And what does EVP stand for?
It's electronic voice phenomena. It's capturing spirit voices on digital and tape recorders. And I found that really interesting, and I decided I was going to try to do this. And for 3 months, I never heard anything. And then
where'd you first hear about it?
Well, years ago, I was on like a sighting show. I think that was the first time I'd heard anything. People would go out to like the Confederate cemeteries or different places and pick up voices, and I always thought that was very interesting. But I wanted to take it to a new level. I thought, well, I would like to really speak to spirit guides, extraterrestrials. Didn't know what I was getting into. Angels. I didn't want to just talk to dead people. I really wanted more, but it took me in a whole other direction.
About reverse speech, you say, I, like virtually all of you, have been on the same quest and literally stumbled into EVP and reverse speaking. These open doors to me. I've heard it described as pulling aside the net for a glimpse out. It certainly has its limitations, but I've come to rely on this as probably the least corrupted source of information within this net, as there is no conscious control over it. We can't give ourselves reversals. It isn't conditioned by what we believe, nor what we have been taught. It is outside of time and reveals the past as well as the probable future, which is not cast in stone. In all of the 400 plus people I have listened to in reverse, no one has ever given a different story nor contradicted this basic information. Many add to it, but it is always the same story.
Right.
So you're starting to reverse EVP for the first time, and what are you discovering?
That Francis was pretending to be my spirit guides, the elementals, the earth, that he and his little group of friends were jerking me around. And then they came up, once I started to get it, they admitted it and laughed, and they thought it was just a tremendous joke that I was so gullible. And that's when I tried to get rid of him, of course, but then he was not going to go. But it wasn't until I started really talking to him, and it took a long time because he wasn't the kind you could just sit down and have a regular conversation with. He really was quite mentally ill, actually. He had died of rabies, and I think that carried over into the other world. And but he would, if he was in a mood, he would answer my questions and about what life was like over there and all that. So the reversals, once I knew I could always catch a lie, I had a lot more confidence about talking to these people, because I knew that if they were going to jerk me around, I would catch it right away. And once they knew that, the lies stopped. One night, I'll never forget it, I was so disgusted with this whole thing, and I thought, everybody's telling me, just put the things away. Why are you doing this? You're jerking around with these lower astral, and people, and they're just liars and screwed up. And I laid there in bed, and I thought, why do I do this? And I had this thing happen to me, and it's one of those things you really can't put into words, but it was like I knew there was something I had to do, and I couldn't put it aside. And from then on, I stopped trying. And it's been a circuitous path, but finally, one thing, it was like the onion, opening up, trying to get to the heart of what all this layers of stuff was.
Now, what types of people have you reversed, Peggy?
All kinds of politicians, because they're making the decisions that affect everybody's life. Lots of people in the UFO field, in the metaphysical field, just people on talk shows, friends, myself all the time, and lots of spirit people.
What are some of the most astounding reversals from these people that you've heard? Some that really stick out.
When I first heard that on the wedding of Charles and Camilla, when the reptilian said, "Yeah, I'm a wolf, Peg, but who's going to believe this?" It's such a bizarre story. I have lots of them. I have reversals from Pleiadians who used my voice to communicate with me. Lots of reversals referring to the One or God, and how things are going to be so much better in the right after we get through this, what's coming up.
How do you think that happens, that the mind is able to transmit this information onto an electronic media?
Well, I think it's new. I think it hasn't had a chance to be corrupted as much by the reptilians. Reptilians know our minds inside out and backwards, way more than we do. They're dreamscapers, they channel, they do, give us all kinds of visions, they dress up as angels, whatever. But this is new, and I don't think they saw the impact. They didn't see it coming. And given enough time, I guarantee you they'd corrupt it. They would find a way. But right now, there's times when it can be manipulated, but it's few and far between. And if people here and there and there and there and all are actually working with this, they're going to have a hard time with this because it's a new thing. They've had thousands of years to play with our minds.
Now, you've also said that the reptilians are starting to have the capabilities of changing files in your computer.
They have done that, but it's crude. They usually say sexual things or threaten me. It doesn't happen very often with big voices. They can change EVP very easily, though.
Now, you're the first person that I know of to reverse EVP. Are there others before you that have done that? I'd
heard of others reversing, but obviously people are very fixated on wanting to speak to loved ones, and that's why I left AAEVP, American Association of Electronic Voice Phenomena, because people were sending files out of their deceased children, and all you have to do is reverse it, and oh my God, this was not their child, but they want to believe that. The people, Tom and Lisa Butler, are terrific people, but they have a lot invested in this. They were advisors on the movie White Noise. They've got books out. If they start reversing, they're listening to reptilians, I'm telling you, because I've been reversing their files. But people get invested in these things. They have too much to lose to hear the truth.
What was life really like on the astral realm once he and his friends began sharing honestly with you, knowing that you had the reverse speech tool to find out whether or not they were lying to you? What did you begin to find out?
They live pretty much like we do, except it's darker and more predatory. They have to make money. They do mostly by stealing, gambling. People steal constantly to get things. They're drug addicts there. I talked to Geraldine. She's a heroin addict. They get together and have orgies just because that's nothing much else to do. They try to get business deals going, which is usually kind of seedy stuff. I actually talked to, or he was supposed to have business dealings with a man who was part of the Manson family.
TJ.
His name was TJ. That didn't pan out, but it's very dark. It's very gangs, street gangs. He would talk about the gangs are in the city tonight. It was just not a place you want to be.
How did Francis's friends on the other side treat him?
They mostly didn't like him. He wasn't very popular because he was a pain in the neck.
And what became of them?
They all went to the Pleiades.
Okay, now, before we get to that part of the evolution of what happened with you and in your contact with Francis, at one point you said you realized, and in your own words, that I just knew this had nothing to do with God, and you began to research this dark world, nothing to do with God, and you began to research this dark world, reading both the Egyptian and Tibetan books of the dead and lots of UFO material. What did you discover during that period?
Well, the Egyptian and the Tibetan books of the dead both talked about alligators and in this nether world, that could consume you. But it was, I think it was Raymond Fowler who had written a book, mostly did the Andreasen Affair books, and he had this statement that said, and I never forgot it, he said that it could be that the UFO, death is the ultimate UFO abduction. I'll never forget that line. Then I also read it, Linda Howe talked about these underground bases and how they could take the soul manipulations of human beings done by these entities, and some of them were reptilian.
And then the reptilians began talking directly with you. What were the nature of those conversations?
Mostly threats, mostly threatening me. They either they wanted to rape me or kill me. That was pretty much the extent of it. It was interesting. They didn't catch on to reverse speaking for about 2 weeks. So whenever I would put on my recorder, there'd be one of them, and he'd be saying something to me. Now they use regular old American names, and one of them would say, I'd say, well, who am I speaking to? And he'd say, I'm an alien. My name is Ralph. And then I would turn it around real quick, and he goes, I'm lying. My name is really John. And I would say back into the recorder, you're not Ralph. Your name is John. And they go, oh my God, how did she know that? This woman they called me a seer. They called me a witch. They called me Ave Sophia, one of them said. They didn't know I was reversing. They'd never heard of this. That's why I'm saying it's new. And finally, somebody figured out, because they're watching, they said, she's doing something with the recordings. That's how she knows what we're thinking. And then they had to be very careful, because as soon as they would say something, which they always talk, I could turn it around and figure out what they were really thinking. So I had hundreds of them here, literally. They told me they were surrounding me, and we're going to, next time you go to the dentist, we're going to put a virus in your gum. We're going to insert cancer into your womb. We're going to rape you. We're going to, it was on and on. And they said, and now watch, she's going to sing for Jesus. And I said, I only talk to the one, I serve the one. And as soon as I said that, it was everything changed.
So they were trying to trick you into Jesus worship.
Well, because Jesus...
Because they controlled that whole ideology.
That's right.
The reptilians pretended to be Pleiadians talking to you.
Oh, all the time.
But never humans.
No. Oh, no. They think human. They look down on humans. They think they're just retarded cattle. But they do. They hate the Pleiadians, but they have amazing respect for the Pleiadians.
So what did you learn from talking with the reptilians? What were the key lessons or ideas that you came away with?
They're miserable. They're very unhappy. They don't like their lives. They're very controlled. They have hierarchies. They have to do what they're ordered. If they don't go along with the program, they're annihilated. They usually have their heads cut off. They have some regular births. Most of them now are clones. They one said, I'm 2 years old, but he was old enough to be doing, they're clones, so that they come from Orion, and they want to go back to Orion because they know it's coming up, but they don't want to stay here. They know they're going to be killed, and they're very angry at the big shots going out on the big ship, very angry that they've been left behind. They're just considered peons.
And who was Vinny?
Well, Vinny was one of the first reptilians that I actually talked to, and I still didn't understand the extent of what they were doing on the other side. And he would talk to me, and I was just kind of excited about being able to talk to extraterrestrials. I thought, wow, you did this UFO show. We always want to talk to an alien, and he was fairly young. His father was a general. He did have a natural birth. He was in the military, and that in their side. He was the one who told me that there was going to be an invasion, and that the new ones coming were very vicious. He could actually be fairly amenable. I mean, he said to me, when this war is over, I'll stand by your side. We'll stand side by side. And I didn't even know what war he was talking about at the time. You know, I was really not tuned in. And then at one point, on New Year's Eve, the Pleiadians came through and said, the transport has been hijacked for an alien, and he's got all the people. And I was like, and it was Vinny. And he was saying, well, you know, we told them that, you know, the Pleiadians were going to, well, we were Pleiadians, we convinced them. And they trusted you. And see, this is what happens when they trust you.
So this, for you, was right around the January 2005
Yeah,
that you
it was
got
New Year's
that.
Eve. I was supposed to go to New Year's Eve party.
So was this just to come on Vinny acting like he's your buddy? Like,
Oh yeah, I mean,
he's
you know,
an okay guy.
you know, I still didn't understand it, and he was, yeah, oh yeah, he wanted me to be his girlfriend, and
So now you know Vinny is full.
they're all like this.
He's just as vicious and two-faced as
Yeah,
most of
they
them.
all are like this. This is basically their MO.
You also feel that your husband Nick is not of the earth originally, that he is of Assyrian descent.
I said that in reverse. That's the only reason I know.
And how about yourself? Do you feel kinship with the Pleiadians, or?
Yes. I wouldn't have. I mean, I never was into, you know, I'm special, I'm Pleiadian. I'd heard a lot of that on the TV show we had done, and I was like, you know, get a life, you know. But back when the reptilians first started showing up, they kept calling me the Pleiadian. And I kept hearing it over and over again. And it was coming up all the time. And then I heard from the Pleiadians. For a short time, they were able to talk to me. And then I knew it was true. And I would say there are lots of Pleiadians here. There are lots. I would say anybody who would be interested enough to watch a program or to something like this project probably is not from here. And probably Pleiadian.
Now, David Icke is probably the most prominent researcher who's well known for his reptilian research now. Originally, it was conspiratorial and government control, and it evolved for him into he put the pieces together and came up with the same types of things that you're coming up with. How has reading Icke, if you have read him or speaking with him, how has he influenced you?
I couldn't read David for quite a while. Just couldn't get through it. And I do think he's probably more accurate in his take on this and on the history of this group with the secret societies and all that. Very, very accurate. He's very congruent in reverse. He does not get into the meat-eating aspect of it on the other side, although he does talk about them consuming flesh and blood during their satanic rituals. But that's more of a ritualistic thing. The people on the other side of their daily fare, they have restaurants on the other side that serve human meat. And so, you know, he's got a lot of good information, way more technical thing about their symbols and their, you know, secret societies and their history than I do. But just, that's a big gap, the meat-eating of the astral people. And other than that, you know, I have tremendous respect for David.
Now, David went down to, I guess it was South America, and partook in some ayahuasca tea. And that particular episode led you to make a statement that you thought that Icke may have received some bad information while under the influence of this tea. Can you discuss that a little bit?
He, in his reversals, he talks while he's talking about the voice that he heard speaking to him while under the influence of the tea. He refers to the voice as the serpent, and that she's lying. She's going to he'll lose the facts. That he did say that he was raped while he was under the influence, although he doesn't remember that. And other things that I think that he was told things that were not true, like, for instance, they're not computer programs. He says they're computer programs brought on by the earth, which felt itself cut off from the source, and that's all wrong.